Thanks. Our next speaker is Nicky, Jameson, reporter from the Fighting Racism and Fight Imperialism. FRFI is the only left-wing paper in Britain that regularly reports and supports the struggles of prisoners against oppressive conditions and for basic human rights.
Thank you. Can you hear properly? Yeah. Okay. Well, as Nadia said, I'm speaking on behalf of Fight Racism and Fight Imperialism, and if you haven't heard of us before, you probably would have asked what is a communist organisation doing in a meeting dedicated to the support of Muslim prisoners. But it is true, as she said, that we are, in that sense, unique on the left in Britain in that we dedicate a large part of our political energy to supporting the struggles of people who are in prison. And that didn't begin with Muslim prisoners, I have to say. The newspaper, which our paper's over there, has been going since 1979. And even then, when the newspaper began, the organisation was already in existence, and one of its main political focuses was the Irish struggle against British imperialism. And we corresponded with and acted in solidarity with Irish prisoners, many of whom then wrote back to us and said, there are other people in here who aren't necessarily Irish, who are not necessarily political prisoners, who might be in here for any number of reasons, but who are in all kinds of struggle and dispute and are having their rights abused, and they need you to support them. So we kind of took up this mantle, and it's something we've continued to do today. And both the campaigns who've spoken before, we've tried the comrades that we have in London and in Manchester, where the Farigi campaign is based, to support them. So what we do in general as a way of support, I mean, it's not particularly rocket science. We write to prisoners, we get letters back from them, we publish their accounts, and we assist to organise demonstrations outside prisons. And I'll talk a little bit more. I was told to talk for quite a short time, so I'll try to. I'll talk a little bit more about that, but I just want to show you and read from, because a few years ago we began to realise how obvious it was that the latest, as Moazim said when he spoke, you know, the latest group of people who were being persecuted in prison were no longer Irish, they were Muslim. And not only were they the Muslim prisoners who were there for under the laws of terrorism, they had become ordinary Muslims who were in prison for no kind of political or religious reason, but by their very identification with Islam were also being treated as though they were terrorists, were also being dug out. And I wrote this article in 2011, and I'll just read a tiny little bit out of it, because it tells you that all Muslim prisoners treated with suspicion. Although terrorism-related prisoners comprise, this is 4 years ago, the statistics might have changed, approximately 1% of the 10,300 Muslims imprisoned in England and Wales, all Muslim prisoners are treated with suspicion. As the Chief Inspector of Prisons has reported, there are two separate and sometimes conflicting approaches. The first, through the diversity lens, focuses on ensuring appropriate religious observance and identifying and preventing discrimination on grounds of religion. The second, through the lens of security, focuses solely on Muslims as potential or actual extremists. At present, the latter approach appears to be better resourced, better understood, and more prevalent. In 2009, the Prison Service amended its guidance on religious worship to specifically exclude prisoners in high-security prisons from leading Friday prayers, including when an imam is unavailable, which in other prisons would mean a suitably experienced prisoner would step in. This guidance applied only to Islam, and strict parameters were also drawn up to limit private group worship outside of formal services. The implication was clear. Muslims must not congregate for prayer or discussion, and any attempt to do so should be viewed with suspicion. On 9th of January, this is still 4 years ago, prisoners at Long Lartin staged a peaceful protest against attacks on their rights, including the ban on any religious activity outside of formal services, and a change to the visiting system whereby anyone over the age of 10 would be counted as an adult. a clear attack on prisoners with large families, the majority of whom are Muslim. Happy to say that part about large families was changed. But since that time, we've seen as part of our role to give a voice to the people inside, because it isn't just about delineating the repression. I mean, speaker after speaker can tell you how racism exists and how the oppression exists, but we want also to be able to give a voice to resistance. And it's not easy resisting, as the people who spoke will be able to tell you who are related or have been there. It's not easy resisting within a high security prison, but it becomes a little bit easier when you know that you have solidarity on the outside. So what we've undertaken to do is publish the account. Sorry, this one's really mucky and manky, but you can see this says oppression of Muslim prisoners in British prisons, and this was sent to us from Frankland. And then it was followed up almost immediately by somebody who read that and then thought they would write to us to follow up from it. Britain's most racist prison. Okay, he's done audience participation. Can anybody guess Britain's most racist prison? It's not actually. It's Strangeways, Manchester, according to somebody who's been to several of them. And I'll just read you a little extract from his before I finish. I was born and raised in the UK, yet the sentencing remarks in my trial said, "You purport to be a British citizen, but what you stand for is totally alien to what we stand for in our country." This alienation and marginalisation set the backdrop to how Muslims are systematically subjugated and dehumanised, what is fundamentally an institutionally racist criminal justice system. I have now spent time in 10 prisons, and the most racist by far is Strangeways in Manchester. I spent 2.5 years there, during which time prison officers and governors radicalised me more than any cleric probably ever could. Upon reception in November 2011 from Belmarsh, I hadn't even reached the wing before I was told by a senior officer in the prison's counter-terrorism unit that Muslims are prohibited from wearing our religious cap, topi, outside of their cells. When I was located to a wing, they ensured I was isolated from anyone with a similar background to me. Officers would then disclose to local gangs of friends that I am a terrorist, as implicit incitement. On more than one occasion, officers located confirmed EDL supporters in the neighbouring cell. In February 2013, roll on a little bit, I was given a wing job. I wore my topi on the landing. When I refused to move it, I was sacked and my privilege level downgraded. February 2014, I sent a judicial review pre-action protocol on the topi prohibition, which had been in effect since 2010. A few days later, they finally rescinded it. In March 2014, officers began inciting prisoners to challenge my wearing the topi. This led to a physical altercation instigated by at least 3 racists. I was assaulted on the landing, but the screws just stood around as if nothing happened. I then defended myself, and only then did the alarm go off, and the screws restrained only me. I was stripped of all privileges for only over a month. The assailant was downgraded from enhanced to standard level, thus retaining some privileges. I was placed on an anti-bullying scheme for over 2 weeks. The assailant was on it for 6 days. Now that might sound like a kind of don't stand up and fight in a way, you only get worse time, but the prohibition on religious headgear has been overturned, and solidarity, the person concerned wants to get their stuff out there, they want more accounts to be there. So like the 2 speakers who said, you know, sign up and get involved with things. I mean, we try to distribute this material because what we think we can be on the outside, and we are political activists, we're socialists, we're not religious, and sometimes we have disputes of politics, religion or whatever, but we see it as part of our solidarity work, our action against imperialism, our action to prevent the endless divide and rule, which is what capitalist society does when it says, there's the bogeyman, they're Irish, there's the bogeyman, they're Muslim, there's the bogeyman, they're a foreigner. Blame them. Don't blame the government for the fact that you've got, you know, things are being cut. Don't blame blame these people. See them, they're the other. Ignore them. Turn your back on them. We think it's the important part of our political work to show solidarity in the face of that, and part of that is trying to give a voice to the people who are inside to get their word out about what's happening.